I knew there was a chance I'd never come back. But even so, I crossed into a war-torn country, alone, because my daughter was there, and no one else was coming to save her. That night, with my heart in pieces and my legs shaking, I crossed the Syrian border. No papers, no protection, just a mother's instinct and a promise burning in my chest. I will bring her back, alive. Before I continue this true story, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching it from. I love seeing how far the story can reach. And make sure to subscribe because what you're about to hear is raw, real, and unfiltered. My name is Louise Monaghan. I am Irish, born in Dublin, but I've spent most of my life in Cyprus. I worked in marketing consultancy, fast-paced, always full of deadlines and campaigns, but stable, especially after my daughter, May, was born. We lived alone in a small house by the sea in Limassol. She was 6, small, bright-eyed, always smiling, with soft brown curls and a glow that lit up any room. After years of chaos, I finally felt like I was giving her the childhood she deserved. I fought for that every single day. We baked cakes together on Sundays. We went to the beach. She'd fall asleep in my lap while I made up bedtime stories. It was our little bubble, safe, protected. And for a while I believed the worst was behind us, that the dark chapter with her father, Mustafa, was over. He'd been convicted of domestic violence back in 2008. The court allowed him limited, supervised visit. I managed every detail, every call, every visit. I thought I had everything under control. But I was wrong. The sun was shining just like any other day in Limassol. May was excited. She'd picked out a frilly pink dress all by herself. Mustafa had asked to take her to the park. Said he just wanted a few hours with his daughter, like always. Supervised. He seemed calm. A little too calm. Said he'd grab some ice cream, promised to be back before sunset. But there was no sign. May walked out the door, holding his hand. She kissed my cheek and smiled that shy little smile. "See you soon, Mommy." I watched her away from the car window as he drove off. That was the last time I saw my daughter on Cypriot soil. The hours dragged. I called once, no answer. Twice, 3 times, and the sun dipped into the sea. A storm rose in my chest. I tried to stay calm, but when night came and he still hadn't answered a single call, I knew. I knew in my heart he'd taken her. I ran to the police station, trembling, filed a report, and the response hit me like a punch to the gut. He may have already left the island. That's what they said to me. My entire body went cold. How could a man with a domestic violence conviction leave the country with a child? How did no one stop him? He wasn't allowed to travel. But Mustafa had left, and he took my daughter with him. When they confirmed he'd boarded a flight to Damascus, the crown dropped out from under me. This wasn't just a custody violation. It was kidnapping. And not to the next town, but to a country on the brink of war. The first 24 hours were a blur of screams in a vacuum. I called everyone, police, lawyers, the embassy, anyone. The answer never changed. There's nothing we can do. With every rejection, helplessness crushed me a little more. May was only 6, and she had vanished into the hands of her own father, the same man who had once beaten me, the same man our court had restricted by law. When they finally confirmed he had taken her to Syria, something inside me just shut down. How? How did a man banned from traveling with his child walk through airport security without anyone stopping him? The official response was like ice. Syria doesn't have an extradition treaty with Cyprus, meaning they couldn't force him to bring her back. That's when I understood what it meant to be truly, completely alone. I tried everything. Reached out to NGOs, embassies, international courts. I gathered documents, begged for help. But every door gave me empty answers. Limited jurisdiction. High diplomatic risk. Meanwhile, May was being taken deeper into a war zone, into the hands of a violent man, beyond the reach of any law. To the institution, she was just another complicated case. To me, She was my daughter, my only reason for breathing. They told me to wait. Wait for what? For her to grow up thinking I abandoned her? For him to do her what he did to me? But only worse. That was the moment everything inside me shifted. Fear turned into fury, and fury into resolve. If no one was coming for us, I'd go myself. Even if it meant crossing war-torn borders, risking death to fight international law. It was just me, alone, against governments, against bombs, against hell itself. But she was my daughter, and I wasn't going to lose her. There was no detailed plan, just urgency. I bought a ticket to Lebanon, the closest country to the Syria border that still had commercial flights. I didn't tell anyone. I knew that if I said out loud what I was about to do, someone would try to stop me or have me committed. In my suitcase, only the essentials: copies of documents, one change of clothes, and a photo of May tucked between the pages of my passport. That smile of hers was all the strength I needed. When I landed in Beirut, I realized this trip wasn't like crossing an ocean. It was like stepping over an invisible line between the civilized world and chaos. Military trucks, sirens, horned faces, weapons everywhere. Fear filled the air. And me? I was just an Irish mother trying to look strong while trembling inside. I reached out to a Lebanese acquaintance, the only one who didn't hang up the phone when I told him what I needed. He said to me, "If you go into Syria now, you might not come back." I answered without any hesitation. If my daughter is there, then that's where I need to be. And so, in an old dusty car with a driver who didn't speak a word of English, I began the crossing. No GPS, no reliable map, just scribbled directions in the desperate hope that I wasn't crazy, just determined. At the border, soldiers stood armed to the teeth. Strict control, rifles raised. I handed over my passport with shaking hands, smiled, pretended to be a tourist. They inspected, searched my bag, then nodded me through. I was in. On the other side, it felt like stepping into a world of ruins. Distant explosions echoed, tanks rolled down roads. Barefoot children jogged through crumbling alleys. The war hadn't engulfed all of Syria yet, but it had left deep scars. I was inside. Now, all I needed to do was find her, before it was too late. Crossing the border felt like the riskiest thing I'd ever done. Well, until I arrived at his house. Mustafa greeted me with a smile. I smiled that turned my stomach. He acted like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just kidnapped our own daughter, like this reunion was just part of some normal agreement, not the result of a brutal betrayal. May saw me and ran, threw herself in my arms as if the world stopped right there, and for a moment I wanted to stop too. That little girl, with her frightened eyes and tangled hair, was still mine. She still recognized me, but everything around us wasn't the same world anymore. The village where he kept her was remote, surrounded by drill hills and unfinished concrete homes. You could hear the call to prayer, the creaking of rusted doors, and sometimes the distant rumble of gunfire echoing through the mountains. In that house, I was nothing more than a decorative piece. The mother visiting, that was the official story. But in reality, I was a clean-looking hostage. Mustafa never said it out loud, but the surveillance spoke for him. Every move I made was watched, every word waited, every hug with May timed. There was no phone, no internet, no way to call for help. And even if there had been, who would I call in the middle of a war zone? Pretending became a weapon, smiling with disguise. I had to look calm, respectful, even grateful, while secretly planning every move. I smiled at breakfast and cried in the bathroom. I told May bedtime stories, and once she was asleep, I spoke silently to God, begging for just one chance. One chance to get out alive, one chance to take my daughter with me, one chance to undo, with my own hands, what the world had allowed to happen. And even though I was surrounded by invisible bars, I refused to let fear write the ending of our story. On the outside, I was just a visiting mom, but inside, every day was a countdown. I knew I couldn't stay long, and if I wanted to escape, I had to make Mustafa believe it was his idea. But time wasn't on my side. I couldn't just run. We were deep inside a Syrian village, surrounded by his family, armed men, and endless suspicion. May was just a child, vulnerable, manipulated, trapped into a country that didn't even recognize me as her own mother. The only way out was to build a lie bigger than the kidnapping itself. I started planting ideas in Mustafa's mind. Slowly. I suggested that Cyprus wasn't so bad, that maybe it would be good for May to go to school there, that I could go back and handle some paperwork to secure his legal rights, that maybe we could work something out. I made him feel like he was still in control, like manipulating me was still a part of his game. Inside, I was breaking. Outside, smiling. Every sentence had to sound casual, every pause, deliberate, and little by little he started to consider it. Maybe it's good for her to spend a few days with you. That night, hiding under a blanket, I sketched the start of a plan. A fly back to Lebanon, then Cyprus. But I needed a moment, a green light, a single window that would let me to take May, even if it's just for 3 days. That would be enough. It was the most dangerous lie I'd ever told. Because if he let me walk out with her, he would never see us again. When Mustafa finally said, "Fine, she can go with you to Lebanon for a few days," I knew it was now or never. He still thought he was in control, but only I knew what those 3 days truly meant. With his permission, we staged a normal goodbye. He drove us to the Lebanese border, handed me temporary travel documents, and laid down the rules. Take her, but bring her back in 3 days. 3 days. 72 hours. That was all I had to cross 2 countries, escape any tracking, find a safe route, secure diplomatic help, and pull my daughter permanently out of that man's grip. The hardest part was done, convincing him to let us leave. But the real battle had just begun. The moment we crossed the border, I was no longer a visitor. I became a fugitive. May in the back seat was just playing with her doll, unaware. Me? I was driving with shaking hands, eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror. I knew he could change his mind at any moment. Call the police. Come after us. When we got to Beirut, I drove straight to the Cypriot embassy. I knocked like someone gasping for air. Inside, they looked at me with caution. But when I finally spoke, my voice cracked, breaking the air. I told them what had happened, and they understood. This wasn't a custody disagreement. It was an extraction, a rescue mission. The clock kept ticking. Mustafa was calling, sending messages, demanding we return. I didn't answer. Every silence was another cord being cut. And I wasn't looking back. On the morning of the 3rd day, I boarded a flight to Cyprus with May. As the plane lifted off, I grabbed her hand tight, and for the first time in months, I could finally breathe. The plane landed in Larnaca, but it didn't feel like a happy ending. It felt like relief wrapped in pain, because even though I had May in my arms, part of me was still trapped back there. Stepping off that plane was like crossing an invisible line. The scent of the sea, the warm Cyprus breeze, it was all familiar, but I wasn't the same woman who had left. And May, despite her soft smile, carries scars, some that would take years to name. The media was waiting for us. Cameras, flashes, crashing, slicing through the air like blades. How did you do it? What would you say to her father? Are you afraid of retaliation? But I could barely speak. All I cared about was keeping her safe. At home, everything seemed smaller. The couch, her bedroom, even the scent of our old laundry soap. But there was a new emptiness, the absence of peace. May woke up crying, nightmares. Sometimes she'd look at me like she was checking to see if I was still there. And me? Well, I didn't even sleep. Every sound made me jump. Every news report about Syria reopened a wound. Then came the legal battle. Mustafa filed for her return, cited international treaties, accused me of kidnapping, as if he were the victim. I had to prove everything: the threats, the violence, the danger. I had to relive every detail in front of judges and lawyers who knew nothing of real fear. I won in court, but even that didn't feel like victory, because winning didn't mean celebrating. It just meant the fight could continue, this time with May beside me. And I knew freedom came at a price, and the trauma was still with us. For weeks I tried to go back to normal. Bake cakes, pick up toys, read bedtime story like before. But nothing was the same. Because now I wasn't just carrying my own pain. I carried this unshakable truth that there were other mothers out there living the same silence. And that I couldn't ignore. It was in that void between past and present that something inside me shifted. The pain had to go somewhere. And if I couldn't forget it, then I had to mean something. So I started writing. Line by line, I relived everything: the abduction, the escape, the closed door, the silent judgments, the nights filled with fear. I wrote like something bleeding, not for pity, but for justice. I turned my story into a book, and that book became a scream. The media started calling again. I was invited onto talk shows, international panels, forums about parental abduction and women's rights. It wasn't easy to bear it all: the shame, the panic, the emotional scars. But every time I spoke, another woman would reach out and write to me. This happened to me too. No one believed in me. You gave me strength. And little by little, I stopped being just a survivor. I became a bridge between trauma and the possibility of healing. Men began to recover too. In time, the nightmares became less often. Her hugs lasted longer. The childhood that had been stolen from us started to be rebuilt, one day at a time. And I, who once wanted only justice for my daughter, began to want something bigger: that no mother should ever have to cross a war zone alone to bring her child home. And that's why I can say this day, with full conviction, I didn't just rescue my daughter, I rescued myself. Because when the world slammed every door shut, a mother's love built its own path, even if it led straight through hell. And this is just one of many true stories that were almost forgotten. In the next story, you'll uncover another hidden truth, another life marked by silence, courage, and impossible choices no one should ever have to make. If this story touched you, get ready. The next one might hit even harder.